Hi everyone, welcome to Miss Finnemore's art class. So today we're doing a watercolour portrait based on the picture that I showed you just before of my mum. I've got that just right next to me on my phone, so I'm looking at that as I go. So what I'm doing here is sketching out the main lines and shapes that you can see in the picture with my pencil. I start with the main shapes that you can see in the background. So you can see in my picture, it's got a windowsill and this fancy sculptural thing in front of it. So I start drawing that first, and then I draw the main outline of the person in my picture. And then I go into the details. So you always start with the big shapes first and then go into the details later. So the next thing to do once you've finished sketching out all the main details in your portrait is to write underneath in pencil the reason why you chose this person for being brave or going on a brave adventure like we wrote in our art books last week. So I'm writing that just in pencil, and then later we're going to go over that with an art line pen. So this is what my sketch looks like now it's finished. Now just one thing to note is I put quite a lot of detail in mine, and I made my picture of my mum quite small, but I would definitely recommend that you focus more on the person's face and make their face a lot bigger. That will make it a lot easier when you go to paint your watercolors, because if it's very small, you need to put a lot of detail and do a lot of small brush strokes, which is pretty difficult, I think. These are some examples of watercolor portraits where the face is a lot bigger. This is more like what I think you should aim to be doing. So the first step when you start painting is to mix the colors. So here I've got a plastic palette and I'm putting a little bit of ochre brown, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of white, and even just a touch of reddy orange to make this kind of creamy color. So you see that I pick up a little bit of the color from the watercolor paint palette, and then I just add a bit of extra water to dip it onto my plastic palette to mix up the colors. Now this is something where you might need to try and experiment with a little bit. Put a little bit of one color and then add little bits more as you go. And sometimes you put it on the paper and you realize, no, this is not quite the right color, so you need to add a little bit of other colors again to mix it. Another tip is that in my picture there's a lot of different shades of creamy neutral colours, which can be kind of hard to mix. So even though that's what I've done in my picture, it could be a good idea to use some brighter, bolder colours that are already on the palette. That might be a little bit easier for you if you're finding it a bit tricky to mix up lots of neutral colours that might be in your picture that you're using. Also here I'm doing this purple background. I've chosen a purple background because my mum has blonde hair, which of course is a yellowish colour, and I've decided to make the background purple because that is a contrasting colour, so that will make her and the creamy colours really stand out because they're opposite on the colour wheel, which means they look very different to each other and they help each other to pop out. Another thing that I'm doing here is because the picture of my mum is really light, just behind her I've put a really dark colour, and that's also to show the shadow that's in my original picture too. Because I added a little bit of blue there, I've mixed in a little bit of blue into the background as well, so it kind of blends. And remember, like we were doing before with watercolors, you can do a lot of blending, mixing colors together, and making different effects that you might not plan for at first. Here I've started to go in and do all the details of the face. Like I said before, I did make my mum's face really small, which I realized later will be quite tricky when I get to painting it. So remember to keep your face in the picture nice and big so that it's easy to get in more details and really show that person's features, because that's the main thing that we want to show here. I'm also going back over some of those parts of the sculptural window ledge, I guess you can call it, and I'm adding in some other colors to make it look a bit more 3D. If you make something just all one color, it will look really flat, but if you add in a little bit of a darker color or a similar color that's just next to that on the color wheel, then you can start to make things look a bit more 3D. So that's what I've tried to do here. So the last step is to use an outline pen, a really fine one if you can, to outline all of the main edges of your picture. You don't need to go over the details that you've done in with your paintbrush that are really small. Just do the main parts so that they stand out from the background. Then lastly, go over your writing in an outline pen as well. And here's the final product. And now it's your turn.